business growth secrets, how to scale your business with proven sales systems. Welcome to Biz Bites for Thought Leaders, the podcast where we deliver actionable insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Anthony Perl from Podcasts Done For You. In today's episode, I'm joined by Doug C. Brown, who is the host of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, and he's a business growth expert who specializes in helping business owners implement proven sales systems that drive exceptional growth. In this episode, you're going to discover the crucial mistakes that prevent business growth, how to build scalable sales systems that work, practical strategies to increase your revenue without burning out. An important thing there. There's a lot we're going to unpack and some great stories with Doug, who has bought and sold, I believe, 37 businesses in his time. He's clicked over $1 billion in sales. He's someone you want to listen to. So let's get into this episode of Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites for Thought Leaders, and continuing our tradition of going all over the world. We're heading over to New Hampshire, and I welcome Doug C. Brown to the program. Welcome, Doug.
Hey, Anthony, thanks so much for having me here. I'm very grateful to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And well, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, and we were just having a little bit of a laugh off air, weren't we, about the fact that Doug Brown is not an uncommon name. So we've got you as Doug C., so that way we make sure you stand out. So tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Well, I started actually working at the age of 3 for my dad and his business. Wow. Yeah. All my brothers did the same thing. We all we swept floors. And
didn't sleep on them, just swept them?
I'm sure maybe when I got tired, I probably did. I don't remember. But yeah, I was sweeping floors at age 3. By the time we were 6, they actually started helping us learn how to sell. They were putting us in front of clients, and people were helping us out, with the orders and things like that. I can only imagine, back then. I wish I had a sample of what my order sheets looked like back then. But, we were... And we worked with my dad for the most part. I worked with him until I was about 19 years old, until I went into the military. And then I always had side businesses all the way through his businesses and through the military and through college or university, as some people call it in the different parts of the world. Over my life, I've actually built, we're on our 37th business at this point.
Wow.
So not all have succeeded. Some have broken even, some have made some money, and some have made a lot of money, and we've lost a lot of money at times, too. So got a fair amount of experience in doing that type of process. But that's my business life, and married, have 2 kids, and it was interesting, like lots of Doug Browns. We talk about Doug Brown, who's a famous hockey player. I love hockey, and music, and a few other things. So. Funny today, I thought I was talking to he was a drummer in a band, and a kind of a famous band here in the United States. And we were talking about me, and he goes, "Are you Doug Brown that lives in Gloucester?" And I'm like, "No, that's the other Doug Brown musician." So that's why I have the C in there. It differentiates me.
Does the C actually stand for something, or you just liked it?
Oh, I always say it's charming, because people get a little laugh out of it. But actually, it's Charles. It's my middle initial, Charles. My mother was going to name me Charlie Brown. No, my father wanted to name me Charles Douglas Brown because he thought it was distinguished. But my mother said, "I'm not having a son named Charlie Brown. There's enough, challenges in the world." So, and I thank her for that.
Yes, that would have been a hard one to have lived up to. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there are, of course, plenty of actors who famously put an initial there for similar reasons to you have, that there's already someone with a similar name, and they put it in there, and it doesn't actually stand for something. If I'm not mistaken, Michael J. Fox, I don't believe the J actually stands for anything.
Oh, really?
I think
Yeah, I didn't know that.
The sound of it.
Yeah.
So there you go. A little bit of trivia to start us off.
Well, hey, you know what? We might go on Jeopardy someday, and the show here, and make some money.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. Make some money is good. Speaking of making some money, and as you said, you've had a lot of businesses, which in of itself is interesting. We might come back to that. But tell me about the current business, because your focus is really, and the reason we're talking today is largely around giving CEOs strategies to succeed and to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in that, so I have over, I think we're over $1 billion now in sales. We just kind of added our next 4 million. I think that kicked us over the billion, which is nice.
Wow,
The
congratulations. That's huge.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's and I have another company that we started just recently. It's actually the insurance business. Life insurance and health insurance, which is super crazy here in the United States. Um, and I love it. It's like I feel like I've come home because of all the accumulation of everything I've done over the years. I still have the software business that's called the Bit No, which is a automated proactive follow-up system, and I still occasionally am helping mostly consultants and some companies in the revenue growth aspect of it too. But I use a lot of that now going into the new business because we're building agents and agencies and things like that within the company.
It's a huge thing these days. To you talk about automations, you talk about getting in and out of businesses, like that sort of stuff. It's almost taken for granted that people are going to do that, but it's not so easy to do that. And you've clearly had lots of experience in doing that. But that in of itself is a huge thing.
Yeah, and the you can get experience from reading and listening to others, and listening to podcasts like we're doing, and those type of things. And I still do a lot of that. And I know, I have people that I hang out with that are, I mean, they literally have billions of dollars, in the bank type people. They're constantly learning. So, but I think the nothing really it. I shouldn't say it this way. Learning a hard lesson and learning it from YouTube versus learning it from your own bank account being drained out, it's a nicer play, sometimes those hard lessons that we learn are really not, they're not failures, they're just hard lessons. And that's where we kind of like, as human beings, we go, oh no, anytime I get into one of those places, Andrew, I always remember Ted Turner. Had a network over here called TNT, the Turner, network television.
Yes.
And at one time, he was losing $20 million a day.
Wow.
And I was like, first time I heard that, I was like, all right, I don't have problems.
Yeah.
Like, we just lost half million or whatever. And I'm like crying over it. He's losing $20 million a day. And the thing about business is very fair, but it's also very, uh, very clear about its rules. It's money out, money in equals loss, break even, profit. I mean, really, that's business when it comes down to it.
It's simple, but it's complicated, of course, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing is that, and I'm fascinated by the fact that you've had so many different businesses, because the one thing that it does teach you is you have to be attuned to what the audience wants.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of businesses fall over, because they go in with an idea and they go, I'm going to do this, but they haven't actually engaged with an audience to find out if that's what they want. And they're not adapting necessarily as they go along the way to what changes may happen. And if that's going to be a lesson that you would have learnt many times over.
Yeah, that was a hard that is the number one thing, really, when it comes down to when we're starting a new business, anybody listening, if you have not engaged your audience to find out not if they like the idea, but actually if they'll pay you ahead of time for rolling out your idea, think about four times more about actually rolling that business out until you can get them to pay for the actual idea. And because a lot of people will tell people, "Oh, that's a great idea," and you know, Andrew, Bob, Mary, Josh, whoever, right? Diane, that's an amazing idea. I love that idea. And then we as entrepreneurs think, oh, well, people saying yes. Um, but you and I both know, Anthony, that if they don't pay for it, it doesn't mean that the business is going to survive, right? So I have made this mistake more times than I care to count, quite frankly, because we as entrepreneurs always go, "Oh, my idea is amazing," and and I disagree with Steve Jobs. Just tell him what you're going to give him, and the market will buy. I think he got lucky, quite frankly, and had good timing. Um, you know, all you Jobs, people out there, please don't send hate mail to myself or Anthony. But the my experience in business is exactly what you're saying. You want to figure out whether you have an audience first, and because there's a lot of amazing products and services in the entrepreneurial graveyard because they just can't sell them. I had a gentleman I talked to. He came to me and his business was kind of almost on the verge of going out of business. And Anthony, he invented a suit that if a paraplegic put it on, somebody who couldn't walk, hands, legs, didn't move, they literally got up and could walk across the room. And I was like, whoa, this is an amazing product, right? But couldn't sell it. He just was way ahead of his time. He just could not sell this product. I actually know there's a company here in the United States. It's kind of worldwide now. It's Starbucks.
Yep.
I actually know somebody who tried to do the exact model of Starbucks 11 years prior to Starbucks being founded. And it was like, if you looked at the business, they were identical. But one of them tried to start it in, the East Coast of the United States, which failed. And one of them started it in the West Coast of the United States, which is today Starbucks. So, that's a great point you bring up. The second great point is you got to roll with the changes, because if you don't, your audience sometimes changes, the needs change, technology changes, inflation, recession, great economies, real estate up, down, all kinds of things happen. And if we don't roll with that and understand, and AI is a good example of that today. If we're not rolling with AI today, we're going to have some challenges in almost every industry. I don't know about them all, but certainly many businesses are going to be affected by AI. If you're a solo entrepreneur and you're a freelancer today, and AI can do what you're doing, if you're a graphics designer, you might survive it, but your clientele is going to change.
Yeah, and the way you operate is definitely going to change.
Mhm.
You just talking about the innovation there, and it made me recall an old gag from comedian Victor Borger, who you might have remembered from
Yeah.
a long time back, and he has this little sketch where he talks about, my uncle invented the soft drink. He tried something and he called it 1 Up, didn't work. Tried 2 Up, didn't work. 3, 4, 5, 6, tried
Didn't work.
6 Up, didn't work, gave up. Little did he know how close he came.
And someone else invented 7 Up, and here we are, right?
Ex-
So it's
Exactly. And I think, but that's the truth, is that you have to keep innovating in business. And just because there are so many stories out there of businesses who had an idea and who failed or didn't get the support. I mean, famously, that's the Walt Disney story, is that I think it was something like 34 banks or something of that nature that rejected him before one said yes. And so there is that. That's the hard thing, kind of, we talked about before, is that you have to be in touch with your audience and be assured that what you're going to provide is something that they will want and need.
I
And
mean,
then you have to be stubborn enough to keep pushing and going forward if you truly believe in it, because sometimes you're going to get knocked back, and it might happen several times.
well, I mean, you mentioned Walt Disney, the ATM that we all, we don't even think about. We put our card in the machine to get our money if we want to today, right? That took
Mm.
about, I think, 13 or 14 years for it to actually take hold because people thought it was going to steal their money and eat it. And, there's a lot. I remember I was born in 1962. Feeling a little old when I say that, but I was born in 1962. And I remember when I was a kid, a child, they were talking about electric cars, but people were vehemently opposed to even talking about it. It's like they used to say things like, I'm not driving a golf cart around. I'm not doing that, right? Well, here we are in, 2025, and, government subsidies are being handed out for people who are buying, and driving. I mean, you got Tesla as a pretty good sized company. You got others out there. The electric car is, becoming more of the mainstay at this point. So certainly hybrid cars are. So everything changes, and you don't want to be caught, saying, "Well, I learned how to repair that steam engine, and I've got a job for life," because that doesn't always happen, and neither does your business. There are all kinds of just the nature of the atom, is constantly changing, and so we must, as you were saying, we've got to be able to change with it. If we don't, there are plenty of things. I mean, some of you are probably old enough to remember the fax machine. Well, I can tell you, I have two daughters, and they were like, "What the heck is a fax machine?" Right? When, uh, there are kids who don't remember time without a cell phone tethered to their body and or learning. And if you look at today, I mean, you got to use apps. I mean, you can't even do business with some companies unless you have an app on your phone. And so, I mean, when I was growing up, the phone had a cord, and and it
It's,
hung.
it's 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 amazing how much it's changed, right? Just as you were speaking there, I mean, I'm just thinking about the fax machine. I remember when it came, and I remember when it left.
Yeah,
CDs were the same. There's technology like that, and you're right. The phone has changed so much. I mean, I used to not leave the house without a wallet. I can't remember the last time I had a wallet in my pocket.
yes,
Why do I need it? I've got a phone. So
yes.
it's things change, and the there's a generations that don't remember what it was like before.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we started the insurance business, because insurance is not going to go away. It's, it might change form, but we'll roll with that. And it's a great long-term business, and we've all fall prey. I mean, there was when the automobile came in, they didn't think it was going to make it. They didn't think the horse was ever going to get replaced. When television came in, they didn't think it was ever going to outdo radio. Television, I think, got caught. They didn't think that streaming was actually going to take over, the movie theaters or the TV itself. I mean, to pay for television, my goodness, like people now are paying for television. We never paid for television; it was free, right? So
Unless
it's
you're in
like,
the UK, the UK, by the way, have been paying for television forever. There's always been a tax or a levy that they have to pay every year for licensing for television, for free to air, so-called free to air television.
really, that's super. So they're the ones who started this paid television
Absolutely,
thing.
they're responsible for it all.
So, yeah, I mean, if people don't, no matter what business they're in right now, I mean, if you're in the roofing business, I can tell you right now that environmentally friendly shingles are coming forth. I have clients that talk to me about this all the time, and they're using it as a differentiation factor to come in, because the old shingles, the asphalt shingles, they can't dispose of them like they used to. So there's
Mm.
environmental factors. They just don't decay. So there's different types of roof. I mean, who heard of a metal roof years ago, unless it was on an industrial building, right?
Yeah.
Solar panels. I mean, they were a thought, but now they're kind of mainstay, right? There's all of these things that, not just innovations of new products and services, but within our business. I mean, my original college focus was on the medical field. My goodness, has that changed, right? I mean, it's now like crazy changed, with not just the technology, but in the United States, it's become way more of a business versus even healthcare. And so, if you were banking that it was always going to be what it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and you planned on being in that business, your business is very different or you're no longer in business. And so, to your point, Anthony, if they don't roll with it, and that includes selling, if people, are still trying to sell like they were back in the 80s and the 90s, or, the older sales methodology, the internet completely changed how we sell. Not because you could just buy things online, but because you could find information. The sales channel used to be the expertise for people making decisions. And no longer is that the case, because now pretty easily the potential buyer can have as much or more information than the sales channel even has themselves.
Yeah, it is. It's the truth, isn't it? You walk into, particularly if you're buying something of reasonable value, although it still happens. Actually, I had this experience with my kids recently, and they wanted to buy a book, and they're standing in the shopping center looking online at how much it is, and they're going into one shop and then another, going, well, we can get it cheaper over here, so we can save
Yeah.
$5 by going to this shop. And you don't. I mean, we went to a shop the other day and we were not buying. I think we bought a kettle. That's right. And it was advertised at a price that already said discounted. We actually didn't even look it up. We went to the counter and said, "Is there anything better you can do?" And they knocked $20 off it.
Wow.
They didn't have to, but but they also know the reality is that majority of people would have looked it up and said, well, this same kettle is $20 cheaper or $15 cheaper over here, so they're not going to get the sale unless they do that. So that whole idea that people are very, very much armed before they walk into a
Oh, yes.
store. You can't have a sale. No longer is there the opportunity for a salespeople to kind of, twist your arm with a few words because, they know more than what you know, because that is not likely.
No, and it happens, as you said, in the retail aspect or in the stores. It also happens in the manufacturing world. It happens in the software. I actually happened today. A friend of mine introduced me to a new software company, and they're in Pakistan. And I'm like, okay, I'll talk with them. And it turns out that they're 20% more than my current development team, which is in a much higher cost area. And I asked them, I said, you're in Pakistan, correct? Because I know what the wages are in Pakistan.
Hmm.
And they said, yes, absolutely. I'm like, well, you're 5 times what you're supposed to be price wise from Pakistan, because, I've worked, I had a company in India, I know the region. So it's, but it's very easy to look things up online and know what a senior developer, for example, makes in Pakistan, in Pakistani money. So, which isn't even close to what they were telling me they wanted to charge us for the price. So it's like, well, that won't happen business wise. So, I can also find out cultural differences. I can find out, I mean, if anybody, I had a company in India, so I can say this, they take a ton of vacation days. Compared to the United States, it's very culturally different on the time off. So, we can factor all these type of things in. If we're looking to buy a laser guided whatever, machine for our inspecting the bottles and cans for our manufacturing plant, we can look up this stuff, and there are people who are proud to put that information out. And we can find out all kinds of things before that salesperson comes through the door, or before we even invite a sales channel in. A lot of times there are meetings now that happen within companies. So that whole dynamic shift it will continue, ever changing shift will always continue. With AI today, I mean, it's taking another shift. You can have conversations with it to elicit responses that you might have had with meetings, with sales teams. And so you can have all those conversations ahead of time. So you can just zero in on these things. So that there's, innovation is always a thing that's going to happen. Adaptation is the thing that sort of lags, I think. Anthony, that's been my experience.
So talk to me. Let's get into this whole sales thing a little bit more, because I know one of the things that you like to talk about is the problems that people have with unpredictable revenue. Pretty common problem in
Yes.
majority of businesses. And you've been through plenty of businesses back as a child, and the businesses that you've owned as well over the years. With innovation constantly changing, how do you actually teach sales techniques that are going to continue to work and adapt because of
Yep.
exactly that problem, unpredictable revenue and change that is happening in the areas that we've just been talking about?
Well, that's a great question, a great point. So, firstly, math never changes. I mean, the outcomes might change based on the formula change, but the reality is that selling is really foundationally grounded in metrics and math. Revenue growth is grounded in metrics and math. So the first thing that we want to do is always figure out what our truthful goal is. That's step number one, and that's the part that people miss. They I'll talk to companies, and I just talked to one. He's 7 million today, and he wants to be 12 million within a year, which is not doubling the business, but it's good growth for that type of business. And we got talking, and long story short, after we got talking, I'm like, "What's the real number?" He's like, "Well, 9." Right? So it's like, well, if we design a plan and mathematically build a plan till 12, and you don't want to do that type of work or put the budget in to get that and all that other stuff, it falls apart. Frankly, it never gets off the ground most of the time. I had a gentleman one time tell me he wanted to go from 3 million to 51 million in his first year. And he had no marketing budget whatsoever, no sales budget whatsoever. It's not going to happen, right?
No.
He would have needed at least in his industry 5 million just for the marketing budget alone. So once we understand what the truthful goal is, then we can really start objectively looking at, because we can put math to that process. And then, so no matter what the economy is doing or what the markets are doing, that never changes. It's a standard concept of and condition. So now, yes, if the industry is wreaking havoc, on the business owner, conditions might change, but the math will never change. It's always going to be the same thing. We have this to sell at X. With this is our cost of selling it. These are, soft cost, hard cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We want to net this type of profit. We just figure out the mathematics at that point. We've got to sell this many things at this and that and this. Going back to your original point, one of the foundational things that we do is who's the ideal right fit buyer for those. Because, most companies, frankly, are selling a lot of things that if they just focused on other things that are already selling, they would sell more and grow more than, the old Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, the 20-80, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of the clients, and 20% of the revenue comes from 80% of the clients. I've never found that to be exact, to be honest. But the proportions aren't really the key. What is important is that there is a percentage of clients who buy quicker, pay more, are a lot more fun to work with. And if we could identify those and double down on those, and here's the key: don't give up the others, because you don't want to knock off 20% of your revenue just to gain back if the other thing doesn't work as well as you want it to. But when you find out who that ideal right fit buyer is, your messaging gets clearer, your targeting gets clearer, everything just falls into a lot more of an aligned process. And from there, once you understand that, it's like, okay, now how do we massively prospect to get these people? And then once we massively start to prospect to get these people, I always like to induce at least 6 new ways into a company that are working within a year to grow a company. And then how do we automate those 6 ways, right? So we can free up our time and our monies. And it's just constant influx of business coming in at that point. And so then how do we up our sales conversations, and how do we anchor all the math to each one of these stages? And I think one of the more important ones that people miss are there are two, and this is one of the reasons I developed a personalized follow-up system, because I literally lost $125,000 sale by going on vacation.
Ooh.
Yeah, the vacation cost me $4,000. So now you can figure out what my vacation really cost me, right? And I was like,
I hope you got a couple of decent margaritas out of it.
yeah, I actually thought I needed at least a dozen more margaritas after I lost that sale.
Yeah. Well, that is
But
a
yeah,
huge,
so follow
huge
up
thing.
is super important. So we follow up's the glue that holds everything together. It's the glue that holds the relationships together. And so we built that system. But I think one of the things that most people miss out of the whole thing, Anthony, and growing revenue, is we can't, if we just grow the company revenue, but we as individuals don't grow our mind, like shape our mind to accept the new growth, accept the new challenges, accept the new responsibilities, accept the new, fact that we are now doing way better than we were. If we see ourselves at say a 7, but we grow to a 9, I see this time and time again. The entrepreneur will actually start coming back to who they believe their identity is, and they'll start sabotaging the growth. And so a big component is also conditioning that part of us, because we all have desires, fears, wants, doubts, confidence levels at certain levels. But we've got to constantly keep growing that. Otherwise, and I've done this to my own businesses. I've done this, where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't know why I was doing it, right? And then I figured it out, and um, you know, you got to keep going in that process and keep growing if you want to continue to grow. Going back to your innovation and things that are happening, the world will do this for us. It'll kick us over and over and over until we, you know, understand that we're not the center of the universe. We're just part of it.
Yes, it's and that's an important lesson. It's simple, but it is the truth that we often forget that there are other people around that matter, and it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. Really, that businesses need to understand fundamentally their audience in
Yeah.
order to be able to respond and to grow. And innovation is a part of it, because that's part of the process as well. Is that now there are expectations? We talked about it before, that the expectations of what people have are very different to what they were 20 years ago, and they're going to be different again in 20 years time from now. They're probably going to be different in a year's time, the way change is happening. And AI is a good example. AI has come into sales. I mean, I know of a company that replaced 80% of their sales team with AI, and they've had a 60% growth
Hmm.
as a result of doing it. Now, it depends what you're selling. That's a low ticket, sort of a $100 a month kind of subscription idea, where it's fairly straightforward for people to understand, and AI can sell that. But
Yeah. So to that point, Anthony, I think you're bringing up a very smart cautionary
mm,
phrase, which is, you know, it isn't for everyone, folks. You're not gonna probably, in high probability, take out a complex sales situation with AI today. It's like unlikely to not happen. I should say it's like unlikely to happen, very likely not to happen. So before you run out and start deploying AI and kicking your sales team off, yeah, let's do a thorough study on that one.
Yeah, I mean it is one of those things, isn't it? And it's cautionary with all of this sort of stuff. AI is a good example where some of these things are worth trying. There are some things that will take you to a certain point, but it does depend on the nature of the industry. It does depend on the nature of what you're selling, and in that particular case, it's a product that doesn't need isn't going to, it's not going to be service driven, put it that way, that it's not, you're not going to actually need to engage with a human. It's basically a software product that they're selling a subscription to. So it can make some sense in that market, but I'm in the business of podcasting. That's not something that is going to be able to be replaced by AI. I know there are AIs that can do certain amounts of things, but we've traded a number of stories here today, and you can't do that with an AI. They're not going to be able to do that in the same way. And that human element and how we respond, particularly in a sales process, is also important, because often it is that rapport that you develop with someone which has a big emotional stake in your ability to be able to connect and sell.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the future brings in that regard. I mean, maybe in time podcasting does change. Maybe in time, you know, hugs change. Maybe AI can create a hug feeling. I don't really know, a rapport building. Um, I don't, we have a need as a human being to have other human beings in our lives. And if we, and this is a whole like, I would say pet peeve of mine, right? Where I think people are so far moved on the technology side that they're actually getting away from the human to human side. And, I see it in restaurants. I watch people in restaurants and they're looking at their cell phones like through, 3/4 of the meal and barely talking to one another. And I think, AI can do that, but I don't think it will ever get to that. Well, I shouldn't say ever. I don't see it getting to that place where it replaces what we're talking about, what you're talking about right now, Anthony. I think it'll give it a shot for sure, because the video cloning is so good now. I can only imagine where it's going to be in another year, where you just feed it a script and two AI, video clones are having a conversation back and forth, and it'll be a little more difficult to discern. Is it accurately, AI or not? Like, I don't think like we just heard a dog in the background, right? I'm assuming it's your place because we don't have a dog.
Yes, I
Um,
think that I think someone's decided that there's something at the front door, or a package is arriving, something like that. So there's a dog that's going a little bit nuts in the
well,
background. So apologies for that.
no, that's the greatest part of, like, I mean, AI can't do that, right? We can't respond. The AI on this side would not go, oh, it's a dog. At this point, maybe down the line it could. But that's how people, you and I are both human beings having a conversation, and I don't think selling ever will get that far away, that won't happen. But I do agree that if you're selling a moderately low end or commoditized type process, um, in most cases, AI will do an amazing job on something like that. If you're buying I don't know, just pick anything, you know, a, a a piano for your kids, and you're like, what piano sounds great? And the AI can work out these things and tell you differences and these type of things, and you could probably make a decision to buy a piano, right? But if you're a concert pianist who is playing at a high level, high end, you're probably not ever going to get AI to be able to get you to buy a piano. You're going to want to go into a piano store or shop that's been established for a long time, who's, has Steinway or Yamaha or whatever brand you're looking for. And you're going to want to talk to people. So I don't think that's ever going to go away, personally.
Yeah, and it's fascinating you say that, because when my daughter was 12, and she had an opportunity, she got given some money and collected some over a period of time, and wanted to buy a piano. She only had a certain budget to it, but she was very strict. She had to play those pianos, and wasn't what anyone was selling her. It was sitting down and actually, enjoying it and appreciating the sound and going through her own process. And it wasn't
Mhm.
something that you could have done online.
No.
And it does make a difference. And sometimes that, touching and feeling the product or service is an important aspect of how we go about all of this.
Yeah. And I think there's a place for AI to do that, and I think there's a place for AI not to be able to do that. And I mean, I use AI every day of my life, and it's great for the things that I use it for. I just, again, those complex or those, it's really hard to. I don't even know if it's impossible, but it's certainly hard, I think, to emulate or replace what you're talking about with your daughter. And if you're sitting into a piano and you're feeling the weight of the keys and the touch and the feel and all of that, when she's pressing down the notes, she's going to feel a little better playing a certain type of keyboard than another one, and they're all different. Um, and so I know this because I'm a musician and I play piano and those type of things. Um, it's the same thing for a vocalist and a microphone. I don't think I think AI can make recommendations, but I don't
Yeah,
believe it's going to be able to pick the microphone for you until you hear it.
exactly, exactly. There's so many more things that we could have touched on and talked about, and we do have to wrap things up. But I do want to ask you two final things. So, one thing I wanted to ask about, and we're only just going to touch on it. You talked at the beginning about an incredible background. I wouldn't say slave labor at 3 years old, but starting work at 3 years old with your dad, and I understand that, and that would have been an amazing experience. And watching those businesses that he was involved with, going through the military, having many of your own businesses. What are the big lessons that you've learned from all of that you impart then as part of the strategies that you give the people you work with?
So I had a mentor. His name was Richard Minervino. Richard has passed on. I have no idea why he even mentored me. He was a very wealthy guy. I think I reminded him of a young him, when he was going through. And he said something to me one day, and I think this encompasses what I learned in the military and throughout life. And as I get a little more seasoned in my years, I still learned. I come back to this lesson. He said to me, "Son," because I asked him, I said, "Dick, why do people not get what they want in life? Why do people like just not get it? Like anything is pretty much achievable. I can't imagine a male would have a baby unless it was a seahorse or something, right? Like, but for most normal things, you can get what you want in life, and if you're willing to." And he said to me, he said, "Son, here's the thing. When you're going for a goal, the only thing you can do is point your nose in that direction and take one step a day." He said, "You just keep pointing your nose in the direction you want to go. And I promise you two things. One, it will take you 2 to 3 times longer than you figured. And two, it'll cost you 2 to 3 times more than you figured. But if you keep going, you will get your goal." And he said, "Oh, I didn't answer your question. The number one reason people don't get what they want is they quit."
Yep.
And I learned in the military, you can sustain, all kinds of things for a period of time, right? From freezing cold and, combat, all kinds of things like that, right? Um, I learned from my dad's business, you're always going to have ups and downs. When I was 16 and he had a heart attack, and my dad was the center of the business. And all of a sudden, I'm 16, I got to run the business, right? So created a lot of confusion in my life at that moment. But, I made it through. I just kept going. And then my dad, when he got better, he came back and the business grew again. And we did that. As you're always going to run up against things that are always going to challenge us. And the question is, how clear, and this is the reason I start people with a truthful goal and why they want it, because how clear are we on that truthful goal and what we want? And if we are committed to it, we will get there in most cases. You know, I'm sure there are people who have not, but I know even in my life, that's been a very helpful thing. I mean, it's not fun when there's an old song, Frank Sinatra made it famous. It's called That's Life,
Mhm.
You're riding high in April and shot down in May, right? That was one of the lines. I found that to be the way it is in business. It's the way it is in selling. You have a great day and you're like, oh my gosh, I just sold 5 out of 6. And then all of a sudden, like 4 days in a row, no one's buying, and it can beat up on your mental and emotional desire to say, you know what, I'm going to the beach, or I'm going to go I'm going to go to the pub, or I'm going to whatever. I'm going to watch the telly. But the reality is, you just got to keep focused. And this is the second thing I learned. Chet Holmes, when I was the president of sales for Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes, Chet used to talk about pig-headed discipline and determination, which means you just keep going, like Dick, Minervino said. And Tony always talked about CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. If we take those two concepts with what Dick Minervino said, that's how you get your goal. And that goes back to what we were talking about, where you got to innovate, you got to be fluid, and you got to be able to move through the process, because it is not always a linear line.
So much great advice in that there, and it'd be remiss of me not to point out to everyone listening in, and we'll include some details in the show notes. There is a regular newsletter that you produce that people can sign up for and get lots of information on a regular basis about that. So we'll include the details of that in the show notes for everyone. Just a final question for this time, because I think there has to be more in the future. As I've enjoyed this conversation, I hope everyone listening in has as well. What is the big aha moment that people have when they come to work with you that you wish more people knew they would have in advance?
Wow, that's an awesome question. I've never been asked that question. I've done hundreds of these and never been asked that question. The big aha moment that I see is there's two things. Number one, there's rapid growth that can happen. And I mean rapid growth. Everybody has it on their own level, Anthony, right? So, like I love working with solo consultants. It was one of those things that it was originally, it was like, well, they don't pay enough, but I'm at a place now where it's like I take clients when I want to work with them because I got the other businesses, supporting everything else. I'll give you a couple of examples, and then a larger company. So, I had a gentleman that I worked with. His name's Jonathan, and Jonathan was an interesting man. He's super smart. He's a consultant. He was doing $700,000 a year. And he went from $700,000 to $945,000 in 6 weeks in revenue. But we attacked not just the business side of it. And when I say attack, I don't mean like, blitzkrieg. I mean, we attacked the things that needed to happen. But what he did was a great job, was also attacking the mental side of the business, because that's what was holding him up. So when we can free that up, the metrics and the math and the application of that, it can work very rapidly. I just was working, this just happened literally last week. Sam, he's also a consultant. And Sam, we got a 20x increase in production of outbound activity happening for 2 weeks in his business. And he's already set, from the previous numbers, $450,000 in new business that's expected to come through the door from this activity based on our close rate, right? So you can have massive growth quickly. I have done this with large companies. Intuit, for example, which many people know, the QuickBooks company, they do Rocket Mortgage and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, they went from a $10 million loss to a $7 million gain in under a year, so in one division. So these things can happen quickly. So I think that's probably maybe the shock and awe of it, Anthony. But what I really see happen with people is when these things happen, is not only does their business life get better, but their personal life gets really better too, because the skill sets they're learning to grow that business and get that rapid growth directly impacts their personal life, where they have better family relationships, better friendships, more life satisfaction, all kinds of things. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic. So much great wisdom, and I really appreciate everything that you've given us. And I think we've just touched the tip of the iceberg, as it were, in what we could discuss and go into. Doug C. Brown, thank you so much for being an incredible guest on the Biz Bites for Thought Leaders program.
Oh, Anthony, thanks for having me. Again, I'm very grateful to be here.
And to everyone listening in, of course, don't forget that all the details of how to get in touch with Doug are going to be included in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on the next episode of Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.